Welcome everyone to the Art of Flower Gardening with Master Gardener Barry Avery. Today's program is brought to you by the Granby Women's Breakfast Group and the Granby Public Library, and we're glad you're all here today. Our presenter is Master Gardener Barry Avery, and Barry is going to share helpful tips to help us coax some beautiful blossoms from our perennials, our annuals, our shrubs. He is a certified UConn Extension Master Gardener, as well as a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine veteran and a graduate of Humboldt University with a degree in biology. He is a 40-year resident of Granby and a lifelong gardener. Barry is actively involved in the Pollinator Garden at Holcomb Farm, now going into its third year. And he was one of the original idea planners for an arboretum at Holcomb Farm. And I don't know if you've had a chance to get to that tree trail out at Holcomb Farm, but it's a really nice walk, especially this spring. But we are delighted to have Barry here with us today to share his extensive gardening knowledge. And on that happy note, let's give a warm virtual welcome to Barry Avery. Barry, welcome.
Thank you. I had a mentor who said the first thing you should do at every presentation is tell a joke. And so I told Wanta Holly, but I'm not going to tell the same one to you. A person told me once that you should never call yourself an expert in anything, because as soon as you do that, you're going to find somebody who knows more than you do. He said, if you're a master gardener, all that really means is you passed a test. And so I have been gardening most of my life. Started with my two grandmothers, one of them who had an extensive collection of irises and one who had an extensive collection of peonies. And to this day, those two flowers are some of my favorites. I think I want to start today talking about what we should be doing in our gardens right now. As of today, probably the best thing to do is to stay out of it because it's raining and there's not a lot you could do. So with that said, we'll talk about the basics of gardening and what's important. There's things that we know everyone needs to have a successful garden. First of all, you have to have soil, you have to have a place to have it, you have to have sun, you have to have water, and you have to be able to buy plants. So sometimes that's not the best thing, because some of us have a habit of buying too many more plants than we really need. Soil. Soil is probably the single most important thing in the garden, and typically one of the most overlooked items. Soil is a living organism. It's not just dirt. It's only dirt if you have it on your shoes and then you walk in the house, that it becomes dirt. But soil in the garden is what supports the life of the plants. And what everyone should do at least every year, sometimes depending on a whole bunch of things, you could do it more than once, but you should have your soil tested for the chemical nutrients that the plants need to grow. And you can do that very easily by taking a soil sample to the Connecticut Extension Service in Windsor. If you head down Interstate 91, take exit 37 and take a left at the top of the hill with the light, and then go back across I-91, and on the right is a road called Cook Hill Road, and about 200 yards down on the right is the extension lab for the University of Connecticut, and they do soil tests free of charge. what you need to do to collect the sample is, the recommendation is to get one sample for every 1,000 square feet of your garden space. And that's a pretty good sized garden. It takes several small samples in several locations, mix them together and air dry them. If you take a wet sample to the lab to have it tested, they have to let it dry first before they can do the test. They perform a standard a nutrient analysis that tells you the three major nutrients, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium of your soil, and will make fertilizer recommendations based on the test of your soil sample. I suspect there are a number of people who have never had their soil tested and don't know about it. And we're relatively lucky in that regard in Connecticut by having some of the best, most fertile soils in the United States. A lot of people don't realize how valuable the soil is, but here in Connecticut, we are lucky to have it. One of the things that people have been misunderstanding for a large number of years is the complexity of the life forms that live in the soil. And we know this is not an exact measurement, but by extrapolation, they have determined there is about a ton or a ton and a half of life forms in every square mile of soil. And most of them are microscopic life forms. So soil is a living organism. It's not just something that you put plants in. And then depending on the health of that will play a large part in the health of your soil. So have your soil tested, please. It's one of the easiest and certainly least expensive things you can do. And the other respect with soil is the matter of how you handle it after you have planted something in it. Over the course of the years, mulch has become one of those things that people did fairly improperly to one of the most important things that you can do to your soil. An organic mulch will help retain moisture. It will help in the growth of all the microscopic life forms in the soil. And contrary to the old belief that the mulch breaking down and deteriorating would draw all the nutrients out of your soil, the opposite is true. If you do mulch, the best thing to do is to get a mulch that has aged a year or so, and most of the ones that come bagged in Home Depot or Lowe's have been aged, but most of the commercial providers now have mulch of various types that has been aged and is fit for use. The other problem we all have is weeds. Someone told me that a weed is nothing more than a plant that hasn't learned how to grow in a straight line yet. This is the time of the year to fight the weed battle before they get out of control. The longer you wait, the worse it will be. So just do what I do. I cruise around my flower beds and on a daily basis. And if I see a few weeds, I'll pull a few weeds. And if I see a few more, I'll pull a few more. And by that way, doing it a little bit at a time, you don't turn it into a major project. I don't think I need to say too much about tools other than if you're doing pruning or cutting, make sure your tools are sharp. If you damage the stems of the plants, that it can lead to problems with that instigating rot and things. So keep your tools sharp and keep them clean. what we are interested in talking about today is spring plants mostly. So what I decided to do was to bring a few in from my yard as an example of what's in bloom now. I think the first things that I see in my yard every year are the crocuses, some of whom decide they're not going to wait for the snow to melt and come up through the snow. And it's hard to beat looking out your window and seeing a bunch of purple or yellow crocuses poking their heads up out of the snow. One of the other things that we see early in the springtime are commonly known as daffodils or narcissus. So this one's a double white one. See, it has two flowers on the same stem, which is kind of unusual for a daffodil. This has a, I don't know, it's pinkish yellow sort of thing. Another shaded one. And this one, which is smaller, this is a native daffodil that's native to the Caucasus Mountains. And that's where the daffodils originated. If you go to the Alps in Europe and the Caucasus Mountains, you can see some of the original daffodils. And this is one of them. I don't remember its name, but that's not the important thing. Some of the other of my favorite plants that bloom in the springtime, and I'm tangled up here, are epimediums. You can see that? That's one epimedium. Here's another one with a, I'm not getting, there we go, a different colored flower. These are extremely hardy. Guess I've had epimediums in my yard blooming for 2 or 3 weeks now, and they're just really getting started. The daffodils are on the way down. You have some epimediums coming into bloom. But one of the more impressive plants that we can grow in a spring garden everybody see that? They know what it is. It's a hellebore. If you don't have a hellebore, I'll tell you, you need hellebores. If you have a shady spot in your garden and you don't have these growing, you're missing out on one of the more dependable plants there is. They seem to have no problems. Nothing eats them. Animals don't bother them. They start growing under snow. In fact, there are some varieties that will actually bloom through the snow. And the foliage on them is nice and healthy looking and will stay all the way through the end of the year into the fall, and gets covered up with snow. And when these will start to come up through the snow, all you have to do is go back and cut the old last year's foliage down, and you have this brand new plant. I don't know how many separate varieties I have. There's probably 8, 10, 12 that I brought today. And these are becoming more popular all the time because they are basically carefree. You have a little shade that you're having trouble growing plants, or if you have a lot of shade, these grow in complete shade. It'll also grow in mixed shade. Extremely hardy, easy to grow. And I know if those of you who are familiar with the local nurseryman up on Wells Road, he always has plenty of them for sale. Anybody want to take a guess what this is? Can you see it well enough?
Barry, probably back it off from the screen a little bit. When it's too close, it makes it a little
Okay.
blurry. There you go. I think that's a better view.
I would make a guess that if you saw this up close and looked at it, you'd say, oh, that's a lilac. But it's not. This is a Daphne. Daphnes are woody plants that are some of the earliest plants to bloom in the springtime. And this is Daphne Genkwa, Genkwa. It's, as one of my grandmothers would have said, a little persnickety. It has to be happy, and it doesn't live too long even when it is happy. This is my third try. Mine is about 3 feet tall by 3 feet around right now, and I think it's 4 years old. So this one's going to live a while. They tend to be rather short-lived plants anyway. And what you can see is by looking at what I brought in, it's quite a variety of things that are blooming already. This is a double cherry. I can't for the life of me remember where I bought it, but this is very impressive in the springtime too. So when we look at plants, what we want is a variety of things that will grow, and by buying a variety of plants, you'll have something in bloom all the year, hopefully. One of the things you don't want to miss out on is the variations in foliage color. This is a rose. Probably never seen it before. Its variety is Rosa glauca, Glauca, and it has beautiful pink flowers on it, single pinks in the summertime. But right now, the foliage, if I look out in my front yard, this thing stands out not like a sore thumb because it's beautiful. So I'm getting petals all over the table here. So I think if we talked enough about soil, does anybody have questions about soil problems that they have?
Yeah, if any, Barry, would you like to take a few soil questions now from the group?
Yeah.
If anybody has a soil question, please don't hesitate to unmute. Hopefully we'll get you one at a time.
All right.
Hi. I planted some flowers and it said plant them an inch deep, but then I put a little bit of bark mulch on top of them. Is that going to stop them from flowering or coming up?
Are the plants up yet? When
They're not up yet. I only planted them 4 or 5 days ago, so they're not up yet.
You should.
They were bulbs.
Oh, bulbs. If you don't have too much mulch on there, it's not going to hurt them. If you have too much, I would say an inch maybe would
Yeah.
be the maximum you'd want to put down.
Okay, thank you.
They should come up
Good.
if the voles don't eat them.
I know.
All right. So, and then maybe we could talk about pests. This is probably not what I had planned, but voles are a problem, especially with bulbs. I've had a problem with them for years, and I think I maybe have found a partial solution. I can't have any tulips in my yard because as soon as I plant them, the voles eat them. And I think I had 2 tulips that came up this year. The rest of them disappeared. But I found I don't remember the brand name, a device that makes noise, solar powered. You go online and look for, I don't remember exactly how I found it, but something to eliminate voles. It's solar powered and it does make some noise, and some people find it obnoxious, but if it keeps the voles away, and it seems to work for voles and moles both, and might have some more luck with that one. As I said, I would think one of the things that we often miss out on is planting for variety. We all seem to plant the same thing, and would like to encourage people to look around and find things that they have not planted before. Let's see, checking my notes. Buying plants. When you buy plants, if you see something that you like, the first thing you should do is to take that plant, pick it up, and pull the pot off of it if it's in a pot, and check to see if the root system is too congested inside the container it's growing in. You should be able to see white root growth on the plants. If you see a bunch of encircling roots that are growing all the way around the pot, especially at the bottom, you might want to take a look at another one. Those, you can usually recover a plant like that by taking it out of the pot. And I know it sounds sort of brutal, but taking it out of the pot and cutting away most of that encircling root growth. And if you have roots growing around the pot that are higher up in the pot, you should pull all of those loose. A lot of people don't loosen the root ball enough when they transplant a plant, and it therefore doesn't do too well for a number of years sometimes, and in fact will often die. So we really want to just be a little bit brutal to the bound up roots that you'll find in a lot of the nursery pots. And you can actually cut those off at the bottom, and then we plant it at the same depth that it was growing in the pot, or a little bit higher, water it in well, and mulch it. I know, because when you go to a nursery, depending on how long they've been sitting in a nursery, you're going to find some condition of that probably in almost everything you buy. Even things that grow in 6-pans, if you're planting flowering plants, springtime planting for annuals that come in a little 6-pack, and you pull it out of the 6-pack and all you see is this square of roots. I actually just take it and cut the bottom half off and take my knife and slice down the sides and then plant it. If you leave all those roots that are bound up in the bottom of that 6-pack, if you don't take those off, your plant will not grow well. Again, it sounds brutal, but that's the way it works best. My suggestion is you plant, when you do look for plants, look for variety. There, especially this day and age, there are so many more new plants coming out onto the market that we haven't seen before, that I defy anyone to say, oh, I have all of those already. You just don't. They come out on a regular basis with new varieties, new colors. It's not to say all of them are great, but most of them are, or they wouldn't be on the market. In fact, one of the things that we've seen within the past couple of years showed up in food products before it showed up in flowers that we plant for the flowers, and that's genetically modified plants. You know, we've known for years that most of the corn in the United States and the soybeans are grown with genetically modified corn and soybeans, and there's a lot of controversy about those because of the damage that is caused by spraying the Roundup ready corn and soybeans and killing everything but the corn and soybeans. The genetically modified flowers that are now on the market, the most famous one, and probably since they don't have to declare it a GMO because it's not a food product, so you're not going to see it on the label, are what are called the super petunias. The petunias that you can't kill, that have the big flowers and all the really different colorations on them. Some of them are called cowlick varroa. Those are genetically modified organisms, almost all of them. They also have some zinnias that are out, orange zinnias that are genetically modified. So if you want to be a purist, I've always thought that, just my opinion, that the best colors and the purest colors and the most exciting, I see you have a friend, the most exciting ones are the ones that look natural. I don't like just personally don't like some of the colors I see that just don't look natural, but that's just my opinion. And you know what they say about opinions. If you have a trip to a nursery and you run across things that you don't know about, the best thing you can do is get on your cell phone. We all have those cell phones now, right? And look it up and see what it says about it. That can be a big help and may even confuse you. But you can do that. You can look the plants up and get some idea what they're about. Let's see. One of my rules that I've followed sort of meticulously is that you never plant anything in your flower garden in a straight line. Because Mother Nature doesn't have straight lines. You can do it in your vegetable gardens, and probably most of us do, but if you have a flower bed, you don't, straight lines are not pleasing to the eye, and any horticulturist who's been educated along those lines will tell you, if you go to a garden, Elizabeth Park, it may have some straight lines over there, but they're tempered by growth. The tulips are in bloom now at Elizabeth Park, and they are in straight lines, but they'll disappear pretty soon, and the roses will start blooming, and you won't notice it at all. Try something different every year. That's what keeps the gardening people happy is to try something different. There are new plants coming out every year. Some of them we have experience with that variety maybe, or that genus of plant, but there's a new color. It seems that everywhere I go, and I've already been to, let's see, 3 nursery visits so far this spring, and we're just getting started. So that and I've seen things that the excuse, it spoke to me, said, buy me, so I did. So we'll see how those turn out. Do something different. I don't plan any of my flower beds. They just happen. I buy the plants and then I decide where to put them. If a plant strikes me as something interesting or different or pretty, I'll buy it and find a place for it. Sometimes it might take a year, but that's just my philosophy. If we are real flower gardeners, one of the things we want is variety, and we want new things all the time. And with the past year and a half or so of all this crap that we've been through, and we haven't been able to go out and buy, it's tempting just to buy one of each. I didn't go to sleep. I'm looking at my notes. Watering. I don't know how people decide when to water and when not to water. But I have been to places where they say, oh, well, we water once a week. Well, that might be a golf course, but Mother Nature isn't on a schedule of once a week. So what you should do is water really only when you need it. If you overwater, it can be just as bad, and in some cases worse for the plants than not watering them enough. It's the 2-knuckle rule. If your soil is still moist up to the 2nd knuckle, you're probably okay. But if it's not, you might want to think about watering at that point. That's always been the rule I use, and for some reason or other, it seems to work for me. What I've left with Holly is a recommended reading list of books about gardening, some that are specifically about gardening, and some that are a bit more esoteric about the philosophy and the psychology of gardening, which I find to be the more interesting thing. And if you ask people why they garden, if you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers. Everybody has some reason why they do, whether it's, oh, I just need to do something. I like flowers. I like planting things. I like Mother Nature. I like Earth. My grandmother did it. That's my excuse. Maybe all of those. And I don't think Holly mentioned it in the introduction. I am a gardener, and I blame being a gardener on my 2 grandmothers because they put me to work in their garden. And when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I've never forgotten that. I learned a lot of things from both of them. Some were good, some were bad, but they were old-time gardeners. And so if you can figure out how old I am roughly, and then when take 6 or 7, I've been at it quite a while. It's the only time I haven't been gardening actively is the 6 years I spent in the Navy. And one of the first things I wanted to do when I got out of the Navy was go somewhere where I could have a garden. I missed it. I think psychologically, it's a healthy thing to do. You can go out in the garden, you can talk to your plants, and they might even talk back to you. Who knows? It's a relaxing thing. Physically, it's good, especially for those of us who are not kids anymore. To be able to get out in the garden and do some work is an active, positive thing to do. Okay, this one is a little bit more politically motivated, supposedly. I don't see it as a political issue. We are in climate zone in Granby, in climate zone 6A. When I moved to Granby, we were in climate zone 5. I've lived here 40 years. I have plants growing in my garden that are supposedly only hardy to zone 7, but they don't know it. And I have a couple of plants of the same genus that are only hardy to zone 8, but they're still live and well in my garden and flourishing. So something's going on. I have a friend who is from Granby, who lives in Berlin, which is zone 6B, who has corkscrew palms growing in his yard that are 12 feet tall. Now that is a relatively hardy palm tree, but still, when you think about it, we don't think about palms being able to grow in Connecticut. We have deciduous trees, lots of them, but I defy you to find a native palm in Connecticut. You're just not going to. But we can grow them. Easily. I had a hardy banana, a variety called Musa, M-U-S-A. That was probably, I don't remember exactly, 7 or 8 years old. And it grew in my yard, and it was hardy, and it lived until one of our famous residents, a big black bear, decided to rip it apart and eat it. I don't know if it actually ate it, but it shredded it, and that was the end of my banana tree. So the point is, push the zone. Find something you like to say, wow, I haven't seen that. Since it's hardy to zone 5 or 6, maybe if it's hardy in zone 7, give it a shot. If you were to plant a plant that says it's only hardy to zone 7, find the warmest spot in your yard with the most sun, and you might be surprised on how exciting it could be. I said I left a reading list with Holly, but I also want to mention a couple of things for your consideration. And one or two of them is joining the Connecticut Horticultural Society. I've been a member for a number of years, and it's a good organization where you're in constant contact with other gardeners in Connecticut. We have program meetings 9 months of the year. We will be back to live meetings, hopefully within the when our meetings start up again this fall. The other organization is the Connecticut, that was the Connecticut, is the American Horticultural Society. It has a lot of benefits, a lot of nurseries, garden centers in the United States are on a program with American Horticultural Society where you get a 10% discount. And what that means to me is that not that I saved 10%, but that means I could spend 10% more money than I planned on. So I can get more plants. That's the important thing about it. And the other thing is to explore a little bit. I have over the past couple of years found 2 nurseries that are a long ways from here that have plants that I have never seen before, or if I have seen some of them, have never been able to find them. You might want to write these 2 down if you have a pencil and a paper, or if your memory is better than mine. The interesting thing is they're both on the left coast of the United States. One of them's in Oakland, California, and it's called Annie's Annuals. And Annie's Annuals has not just annuals, but perennials. And I say this with no fear whatsoever. I've ordered from Annie's Annuals twice now, both in the past 2 years, and they are the best, healthiest, most vibrant plants I've ever gotten through a mail order system anywhere. They do tend to be a bit more expensive, but in my way of thinking, if you buy 5 plants and they're a little more expensive, but you know they're going to be healthy when they come, and it's worth the extra money. The other one that's out on Far West is, interestingly enough, Far Reaches Farms, F-A-R Reaches Farms, because so they're reaching way out. They're in Oregon or Washington, and they have a lot of plants that you're not going to see anywhere else. They sort of specialize in plants that are hardy to that particular zone, but there are a lot of plants that they have, and I've ordered from them and have been quite successful with the ones that I've ordered there. Did I mention nature doesn't grow in straight lines? Good. I don't want you to remember that. It's okay in your vegetable garden. Put out water for the bees. If you don't have a lot of water for the bees, if you don't have a water feature in your yard, I water my neighbor Mark's bees for him, and every year I get a nice jar of honey in return. Bees need water. The more bees you have, the healthier your garden will be. So put out a shallow pan, an old pie pan or something, and bury it up to the edge and fill it with water and keep it clean. I think I've probably said this before. I said I don't garden with a plan. A lot of people do like to plan things, but I find it more interesting and much more exciting to buy something and then try to figure out where to put it. And the other thing I want to mention with the Connecticut Hort Society is that we haven't had them in 2 years, but every year we take a bus trip to somewhere where we wouldn't typically shop, maybe to Massachusetts or Pennsylvania or somewhere in New York on a plant buying day. And sometimes it's 2 days, or we'll go to nurseries that we haven't been before. And that's a great benefit to get to talk to people about plants, and also to get plants that you may not have ever seen before. I started this off talking about soil and mulch, and I don't remember if I mentioned it do not ever even think about putting plastic mulch in your garden and then putting wood chips on top of it and expect your plants to grow with that. There was a period of time where people thought that putting back black plastic down and putting wood chips on it was gardening. Then there are some commercial people who will still do that. If you want to mulch and you want to put some weed barrier down there, or porous weed barriers that you can put down that will still allow water to flow through it. Questions? Any questions?
So Barry, this is
Yes.
Holly. We do have a couple of questions that came in
Okay.
during your presentation. So I'd like to address those first with our folks. First off, somebody wanted to know if you would be willing to share your address because they are interested in a drive-by. They imagine that you probably have a very lovely garden, and so they're interested in that. So we've got two choices here. I can you can tell us your address, or you can choose not to, or we can refer people to perhaps you come up in a Google search anyway, but you know, that'll be your choice.
We could do both. I live on Heather Lane, 17 Heather Lane.
Oh.
Been there for 32 years now, I think. Let me give you my email address too. Feel free to email me with questions. My email is barryavry@cox.net.
Okay.
So believe it or not, there are two Barry Avery somewhere in the world, and I hope to never meet the other one. So
I wonder if he's a gardener. So I also wanted to let you know, Barry, that while you were doing your presentation, I did send the your recommended reading list in the chat feature of Zoom here. So that is there. And I wanted to let everyone know that if you'd like a printed copy of that, there are extra copies available at the library, and folks are welcome to come down. The library is open to the public 6 days a week now. We've got some modified hours, but actually they're not that modified anymore. So if you're interested in coming down, or if you'd prefer to still do a curbside pickup, we can certainly put that information in an envelope and schedule a curbside pickup for you for that. But a number of those titles that Barry mentioned are available at Granby Public Library. I think some of you can see that some of them are on display behind me here. And you're welcome to place hold requests for them. If we don't have them, we can most likely get them for you from another one of the libraries in our consortium. Okay, so having said that, let me just double check and make sure I think there were more questions. So now we know how to see Barry's garden. Oh, this was a question I had too, so I'm really glad someone asked this. Is there a rule of thumb about pruning your perennials? What time of year is best to prune those shrubs? I know you talked about it early out of the presentation, and so what bits of advice can you share with us about pruning?
Well, there's actually two best times. And sometimes it sort of depends on the plant too. But this time of year and until the end of spring, early summer is probably the best time to put perennials in. So that gives them a full 2 seasons or 2.5 or 3 seasons of growth before frost comes. One of the dangers in planting too late in the fall is you could often have the plant that you planted late suffer from frost heave. That's when the soil freezes and thaws alternately and can push the plants out. And the thing to do that, if you do plant late in the year, plant it, water it in well, and then put a nice thick layer of mulch around the plant that's probably twice or 3 times the size of the plant to minimize the amount of freeze-thaw cycle effect. She mentioned the books, the one that I have, there's something that says in the Master Gardener's thing that you're not supposed to recommend for your benefit. In other words, buy from me. But this book is the most valuable book about perennials. It is Essential Perennials. It's on the list. It's by Ruth Rogers Clausen and Thomas Christopher. Tom just happens to be a good friend of mine. He lives in Middletown. His wife's a professor at Wesleyan. Tom has one of the most spectacular yards you've ever seen in your life, but it's not open for the public. So, and if you would like to come up and take a look at my garden, or if you have questions about gardening, if you have problems, just send me an email. As a master gardener, I should mention this too. The master gardener's office, if you have problems, is in the Exchange building in Farmington now, across from the UConn Health Center there. It used to be in West Hartford. It's in Farmington now. If you have problems that you can't solve, if you have a plant that has a sickness, you don't know what it is and you can't figure it out, if you take it to the master gardener's office in Farmington, they can help you. They might not know, but they have the resources to find out, and that is always free. You're paying for it with your taxes, but so it's not absolutely free, but it doesn't, there's no cost to anything that the master gardeners will help you with.
Thank you, Barry. That was really
Okay.
helpful. I'm glad you mentioned that about the master gardener being relocated to Farmington. That's good knowledge. I also wanted to mention that Essential Perennials that you mentioned, we can get copies of that for folks if they'd like to place a hold request. And then I also want to go back and just kind of, one of the other questions was, perennial planting is good to know when we can do that, but how about pruning? How about pruning our shrubs? When is there a rule of thumb about pruning shrubbery?
This isn't a cop-out, but it depends on the plant. So for me to say it ought to be done in the springtime or ought to be done in the fall is not an answer. As an example, probably one of the plants that gets most pruned improperly are hydrangeas. Hydrangeas there are 2 different types of hydrangeas. One that blooms on old wood and one that blooms on new wood. And if you have a hydrangea that blooms on new wood and you prune it in late spring, early summer, you probably won't flower that year. What's wrong with my hydrangea? It didn't bloom this year. Did you prune it? Yes. When? Well, maybe it was the wrong time. General rule of thumb is when plants are not in active growth. But there again, that's not necessarily true for all shrubs. There are plenty of shrubs that should be pruned or can be pruned when they're in active growth. So there is no general blanket statement on when to do it. If they're deciduous plants, you generally are going to prune them when they're dormant, which usually in late summer, early fall, some of them even in the winter. People who grow apples prune their plants in February and March. So if you go up on Lost Acres Road, you see an old guy up on a ladder in an apple tree. He's pruning. So it's a. I think the best way to answer that question is to tell people if they want to know when they should prune something, if they can send me a message and tell me what the plant is, and I can give them some guidance on it. One of the other things that as a master gardener, I don't call it obligated, because I enjoy this as much as anything, is to visit people's homes if they have problems, or if they have something they'd like to talk over and discuss and don't know quite what to do. I am available to do that. And that's free, by the way.
You're going to get a lot of phone calls. I think you're going to have a lot of calls. Everybody in the Zoom is going, oh boy, here we go. Let me make sure I get his number. Okay, so Barry, thank you so much for all this great information. And I don't want to shut anybody out who may have a live audio question. I think we've covered all the chat questions that have come so far, and we probably have another minute or 2 or 3 to answer additional questions. Does somebody want to unmute? Oh, it's pretty quiet out there. Okay, so it sounds to me like we've covered the basics with the art of flower gardening.
Holly,
Yes, I do have another. Yes, go right ahead.
Barry, you just mentioned, thank you for doing this today, but you just mentioned hydrangea. So my hydrangea, I wish I could send you a picture. They bloomed beautifully last year. Very, very big. I cut them down at one point, and then in the summertime, they were the size they were before I cut them. But now, of course, now they're all twiggy and stalky, and I have to get out there and rake the leaves that are inside the plant shoots or the plant stalk. So some of the, they're not dead yet. So some of the stalks that are coming out have baby leaves on them. So what is that meaning? I'm going to have lots of blooming on those particular.
I can't tell you without looking at it. I don't think. If you want to send me an email, are you in Granby?
Picture. Yes, yes. Mountain Road.
On where? Oh, yeah. If you want to send me an email with your address and what you need to know, I'd be glad to get back to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Excellent. Does anybody else have a question? I will give you more time to find the unmute button on your device so that you can ask it.
I have a very quick question. I cut some forsythia because I want new ones, so I didn't want to go out and pay for a whole bunch. So I cut branches and I'm forcing them in little pots. How long before I should transplant them into the real place?
Are they developing roots in the water?
Well, I don't know. I just did that a couple of days
ago. You just did it.
But I put the hormone stuff on it and all that.
I'd give you the same answer that I gave just a couple of minutes ago. Okay, send me an email, tell me about it, and I'll get you an answer, because I'm not sure. I know you can't kill forsythias no matter what you do to them. And I personally think we have way too many of them, but I will have to check with my references to see what it says about pruning them and how to propagate from cuttings. I'm just not sure.
Okay, thank you.
I could guess, but I'd rather not guess. I wouldn't. Just send me an email and I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And then Nancy, if you really, really want them, you can come up to my house and rip them out of the ground. I've got,
No, I
Yeah,
I
do.
know.
look, they're even growing out of my desk, so they'll grow anywhere. Okay, does anybody else have a question for Barry while we have him this afternoon? Oh, here's one from chat. Let's see here. This has got to do with peach trees. So what we need to know, Barry, is do you know why there is peach curl on peach trees?
Oh, 3 in a row.
No.
It could be any number of things. So without looking at there's a general variety of sicknesses on peach trees that it's called leaf curl, and it can be caused by several different things. So is it obvious now, or don't know? Same answer. Send me an email. Tell me you're the one who's looking for information on leaf curl, and I'll do a little research, because there are funguses that cause it, there are viruses that cause it, there are insects that cause it. And one of the interesting things about the plant world is that we've learned not necessarily a good thing over the course of the past 150 or 200 years, is the more crossbreeding and inbreeding that you have on the plants, the more susceptible they are to diseases. The bad things go along with the good things. So if you want to send me an email on your leaf curl problem, I'll be glad to get you an answer.
Sounds like a good way to go with that.
That's a good cop out, huh?
No, it's not. I think you might need to actually see it and look at it and kick the tires, so to speak. So any other questions? I see we've got someone unmuted. I don't know if you, Annabelle, I want to pet the cat. The cat looks very content and very happy.
She enjoyed the show immensely.
Oh, look at her.
She's a regular Zoomer.
Oh, she's great. So one more question from chat, Barry. Do you have any other nurseries in Connecticut or maybe Lower Mass that you might recommend? I know we heard about the two I sent in the chat about the Annie's Annuals and the Far Reaches Farm, but can you recommend a couple in Connecticut if people actually want to get in their car and go somewhere?
Yes, I sort of hedged that one also. I don't do much shopping at the big box stores. I think if you're a Granby resident, that if you don't visit Meadowview Farms and Cowards, which is just up the street on Route 10 in Southwick, then you're missing out. They have a lot of varieties and the stuff. A lot of the things they have there is they grow themselves at both of them, and they're good ones. There's a very large nursery in Springfield, Massachusetts called 16 Acres.
Yeah.
They have a large variety of plants, and I've already been there once this year. And it depends on whether you're looking for perennials or annuals or flowers, but there's what I would call the top of the line nursery for shrubs and trees in Hamden, Connecticut. I'm drawing a total blank on the name right now. I'll think of it, maybe. There's always in Granby, O'Brien's nursery on Wells Road. He sort of specializes in shade growing plants, but he always has a lot of different things.
And Barry, we heard Broken Arrow in Hampton might be a good
Broken Arrow.
recommendation. There it is.
Broken Arrow in Hamden.
Yeah.
And
So-
you can look online, their catalog is online. If you just go to Broken Arrow online, you can see what they have, and if that's something that you're looking for.
All right, and we have one more question, I think.
Yeah, the other one that in Enfield is called Garden Dream or Garden Stream, maybe. I don't remember, but if you Google that, it's up in the northeast part of Enfield, and they have a large variety. A lot of the stuff is grown there. They grow their own. A lot of annuals and perennials, and I've been shopping there for probably the past 4 or 5 years since I've discovered it. The other one up straight up the street across from the mobile station in Southwick. And I can't remember his name either. I don't know if he's open yet, but if you go up on Route 10, the mobile station in Southwick, he is directly across the street from them on Route 10. So, there's I don't think it's called Riverside Nursery. It's on Riverside Drive, Riverside Road in Simsbury.
Well, Riverside Nursery, there's a Riverside Nursery in Canton. The Hinman's on that. But Rosemary, go ahead and unmute, Rosemary. You need to unmute.
Warner.
Oh, Warner's is in Simsbury,
In
right?
Simsbury.
Oh, over the bridge.
And my question is, rhododendrons, well-established, acidic soil, heavily wooded lot, either don't bloom or I get 3 blooms maximum. And nobody has been able to tell me what causes it or how to get some really big blooms. I have neighbors whose rhododendrons grow deep in the woods and they're just covered with blossoms. And it's the neighbor I'm thinking about is 2 houses away. So the soil's got to be very similar, but no blooms.
Did that come across as a question, or?
Yes, what can I do to get flowers that we haven't tried?
It's hard for me to say. A lot of times with rhododendrons not blooming, it's because they might have too much exposure. Rhododendrons, primarily the kinds that are grown around here, are shade lovers. They don't like too much shade, but they like a little bit of shade. They set their blossoms in the fall, and then they pop out, and most of them do anyway, come out in the springtime. So it could be a matter, without looking at them, it's really hard to tell. There could be some disease. A lot of times rhododendrons, if they're too crowded, they don't get enough airflow around them. The buds get a fungus disease and drop off, and so you don't get any flowers. But without actually looking at them, it would be. No, I haven't answered a question yet, have I? It's really hard to say without looking at it.
Okay.
So I think I want to be respectful of everyone's time here today. I was just taking a peek at the clock. And so again, if you have questions, we've got a willing, knowledgeable Master Gardener who's wanting to answer them for you. And if you contact Barry at BARRYAVRY, Barry Avery at cox.net, and send him an email, I'm sure you'll be able to make arrangements for maybe a little consultation there. I think that will work out well. If you'd like to borrow any of the books that are in Barry's recommended reading list, stop by the library or give us a call. Our staff will be happy to help you out. And I want to just say thank you again to the Granby Women's Breakfast Group for finding Barry and having him present on this timely topic. It's perfect time of year. Thank you all for coming today. And we look forward to seeing you at more virtual programs and possibly at some in-person programs as the weeks and the months go by here. So Barry, thank you again for sharing your afternoon with us. And
Appreciate it.
you're welcome.